Afghanistan is a nation in serious trouble. It has a corrupt extremist government, a horrible economy, and ranks the worst in many human geographical statistics. What made Afghanistan the way it is currently, and is there a possibility that the nation will see a brighter future? Let's find out. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is a landlocked nation located at the crossroads of Central and South Asia. Because of its location, the nation has a colorful history. Afghanistan's history dates back to the Paleolithic era, with evidence of human habitation found in the region. By the first millennium BCE, it was part of the First Persian Empire. The region's cultural and political landscape changed dramatically with the arrival of Alexander the Great in 330 BCE, who established the city of Alexandria in the region, now known as Kandahar. Following Alexander's death, Afghanistan became part of the Maurya Empire under Ashoka, who promoted Buddhism. The region saw the rise of the Greco-Bactrian and Kushan empires, both of which played a crucial role in the spread of Buddhism and trade along the Silk Road. The 7th century CE saw the introduction of Islam, with Arab invasions profoundly transforming the cultural and religious fabric of the area. In the medieval period, Afghanistan became a significant center of Islamic learning and culture. The Ghazid Empire and the Ghirid Empire were notable for their contributions to Islamic architecture and scholarship. The Mongol invasion in the 13th century under Genghis Khan caused widespread destruction, but Afghanistan eventually recovered and became part of the Timurid Empire in the 14th century, a period noted for its cultural renaissance. The 18th century marked the emergence of the modern Afghan state under the leadership of Ahmad Shah Durrani, who founded the Durrani Empire in 1747. This period is often considered the beginning of modern Afghanistan. Throughout the 19th century, Afghanistan found itself caught between the British and Russian empires in a geopolitical struggle known as the Great Game. The country managed to maintain its independence despite British invasions during the Anglo-Afghan Wars. In 1919, after the Third Anglo-Afghan War, Afghanistan gained full independence from British influence. The early 20th century saw efforts towards modernization under King Amanullah Khan, but these efforts faced resistance, leading to political instability. The latter half of the 20th century was marked by significant upheaval. In 1973, a coup d'etat ended the monarchy, establishing the Republic of Afghanistan. However, this period of republicanism was short-lived, as another coup in 1978 led to the creation of a communist government, which invited Soviet intervention in 1979. The Soviet-Afghan War during the 1980s was a devastating conflict that resulted in the withdrawal of Soviet forces and the emergence of various mujahideen groups. The 1990s were characterized by civil war and the rise of the Taliban, an Islamic fundamentalist group that took control of most of the country by 1996. The Taliban regime was notorious for its harsh interpretation of Sharia law and human rights abuses. The events of 9/11 led to the US-led invasion that ousted the Taliban from power. Following the fall of the Taliban, Afghanistan embarked on a path towards reconstruction and democratic governance. However, the country faced ongoing challenges, including a persistent Taliban insurgency, political instability, and economic difficulties. In August 2021, the Taliban regained control of Afghanistan following the withdrawal of the US and NATO forces, which pretty much leads to the dire situation the nation is in now. Economically, Afghanistan is doing horribly. It has a current GDP of $81 billion, but with a population of over 41 million people, a per capita income of just $2,459 a year. And most Afghans don't make anywhere near that amount. Most of Afghanistan's economic sectors are primary and secondary ones, including some mineral resources like coal and natural gas, and manufactured products such as textiles, shoes, and hand-woven carpets. While some money may be generated from these economic endeavors, it's certainly not enough for a nation of its size. The Human Development Index, which measures health, income, and education attributes, averages 0.462, classified as low, and this figure has decreased somewhat in the last decade. In terms of human development criterions, Afghanistan does poorly in health and education. The nation ranks last in life expectancy, averaging 54.4 years old, and ranks the highest in infant mortality rates and 8th in maternal mortality rates, both at 101.3 deaths per 1,000 live births and 620 deaths per 100,000 live births respectively. Partly, the economic conditions do play a role in these poor figures, but one thing that plays a much larger role is governmental influence. In 1996, the Taliban, an extremist Islamic militant group, took over the whole government of Afghanistan. They declared victory after the first Afghan civil war, and Muhammad Omar was declared the supreme leader of Afghanistan, despite the fact that Burhanuddin Rabbani was the president at the time since 1992. During the late 1990s and very early 2000s, the Taliban inflicted harsh human rights abuses on Afghans, restricting freedom of speech, banning women from working and attending school, and targeting religious minorities, including other Muslims. When the US and NATO forces invaded Afghanistan after 9/11, the Taliban fighters retreated from major cities and went into hiding in rural areas, particularly in southern and eastern Afghanistan and across the border in Pakistan. In December 2001, the Bonn Agreement led to the establishment of a provisional Afghan government headed by Hamid Karzai. This agreement aimed to create a framework for rebuilding Afghanistan and establishing a democratic government. But during the 2000s and 2010s, Afghanistan wasn't stable, as constant fighting between the US, NATO, and Afghan coalition forces and the Taliban continued. While extremely slow progress was being made to transition Afghanistan into a democracy, all things went crazy in August of 2021 when US and NATO forces fully pulled out of the nation. Within a matter of weeks, the Taliban entered Kabul, leading to the collapse of the Afghan government and President Ashraf Ghani fleeing the country. Since then, Afghanistan pretty much collapsed into becoming the most autocratic nation in the world, reversing back to the late 1990s. Like other autocratic nations, human rights abuses are rife. Why has Afghanistan's history been plagued by turmoil? Well, it's often referred to as a graveyard of empires due to its history of being a challenging and often intractable battleground for various invading forces and empires throughout history. Pretty much, all the past colonizers and coalition forces have failed at transforming Afghanistan into a stable nation. A major factor contributing to turmoil within the nation is physical geography. Afghanistan is a landlocked nation and very rugged, with the country having an average elevation of 6,181 feet, among the highest worldwide, and there are many areas significantly higher up. The physical limitations, coupled with Taliban members adapting to mountainous terrain, have created decades of instability. Thus, urban centers in Afghanistan, such as Kabul, where many Afghans live, are very vulnerable to influences from the Taliban. Comparably speaking, other Middle Eastern and North African nations with harsh physical geographical conditions have also become hotbeds for Islamist extremists, including Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Chad. Another reason for Afghanistan's problems is linked to both physical and human geographical factors, with location being a key cause. Afghanistan is situated between the Middle East and South Asia, with Iran, an Islamic fundamentalist nation, bordering it to the west, and Pakistan, a semi-Islamic fundamentalist nation in South Asia, bordering it to the southeast. Obviously, influences from both sides have destabilized Afghanistan further. China also shares a 47-mile border with Afghanistan in the east. While China has a considerably different human geographical culture than Afghanistan, it has become a larger player in geopolitical affairs there since the US-NATO pullout in 2021. While China may possibly create a positive trajectory towards stabilizing Afghanistan, it's still an autocratic communist nation, So, if Afghanistan were to be further influenced by them, democracy wouldn't be on the table. Is there future hope for Afghanistan as a nation? Possibly, but it's certainly going to be an uphill battle. The first thing that needs to change is the government. The current Afghan government, the Taliban, is pretty much an extremist Islamic militant group. While they have created the framework to manage the country, their approach and policies have led to significant domestic and international challenges, particularly concerning human rights and recognition. And their policies are not bettering Afghans' lives, as the economy is suffering and international aid, once a helpful asset for the nation, has stopped. A possibility is that in the future, rebellious Afghans may revolt against the Taliban government. But of course, this will result in the start of another possible civil war, resulting in many deaths and further infrastructural decay. In addition, a nation such as the United States probably will not intervene in Afghanistan's affairs, considering that the last war there cost the US over $2 trillion. Without any internal changes or external influences, Afghanistan will remain a nation of many woes. Geopolitically, negotiations with the current Afghan government are an extremely remote possibility. In the past, nations such as the United States have entered talks with enemy nations, such as the Soviet Union and North Korea. But Afghanistan's situation is very different in that the Taliban government is labeled as a terrorist organization. While the Taliban wasn't directly connected to many of the worldwide terrorist attacks, it has provided a safe haven for Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, which facilitated the planning and execution of global terrorist attacks, including 9/11. Osama bin Laden, the founder of Al-Qaeda and the ringleader behind 9/11, was supported by Afghanistan's Taliban government. So pretty much, even if diplomatic relations were to hypothetically occur, the intentions of the Taliban can't be trusted. Afghanistan's current situation is bleak and only getting worse with the further disintegration of rights within the nation. Freedom of expression, religion, and speech are strictly prohibited, and women's rights have deteriorated to among the worst of any nation. And marginalized groups, such as ethnic minorities and religious groups, are persecuted. In fact, Hazaras, who make up around 15% of the Afghan population, are the most persecuted peoples in the nation, because most of them are Shia Muslim and the Taliban are Sunnis. A stable nation cannot survive with widespread discrimination and oppression of certain groups of people. Overall, for the foreseeable future, Afghanistan, along with other unstable Middle Eastern and North African nations, will continue to be plagued by instability and uncertain outlooks. That concludes this week's episode. Thank you once again for watching. If you want to leave your feedback about Afghanistan, please do so in the comment section below. And be sure to subscribe to my channel, Our World, Our Planet, Our Home. Until next time.